Hey guys, it's Kira and welcome back to another weekly vlog. It is currently Friday morning and I always come to you raving about my long weekends, but this weekend I'm on the precipice of 5 days off work, which just sounds absolutely incredible. I've booked a couple of days off, so I'm not just suddenly being treated to 5 days off in a row for no reason. I've booked some holiday, but I'm so excited about it. I actually work at a charity. It's the UK's eating disorder charity, and last week was Eating Disorders Awareness Week, so the last couple of months have been very busy leading up to the launch of that and then to the week itself, and there's just been so much work going on. So I was advised to take a few days off and I booked them, and now they are here and I'm so excited about it because 5 days off just seems like such an unprecedented luxury and I cannot wait. I don't actually know exactly what I'm going to be doing for the entirety of the next few days, but a couple of things are certain, and one of those things is of course reading. So I'm currently in the middle of 2 books, both of which I'm very pleased to say I am enjoying. They're quite different reads, but like I said, I'm really enjoying both of them. So we have The Service by Frankie Mirren, which I had never heard of, but Sarah recently came to my house with a bit of a Waterstones book haul. This was in the pile and I wanted to read this immediately, so I have stolen/borrowed it from her for the time being because it sounded so interesting. I'll read you the blurb because I had never heard of it and I didn't know what it was going to be about, but the blurb really pulled me in. So it says, Laurie works illegally in a rented flat in central London, living in fear of police raids which could mean losing her small daughter and her dream of a new life. Freya is a student who finds that she can make far more money as an escort than she could in an office. Life, after all, is already a tangle of madness and dissociation. And Paula is a journalist whose long-term campaign against prostitution has brought her some strange bedfellows. After a shock change to the law, with brothels being raided by the authorities, lives across the country are fractured. As a threat from Laurie's past begins to catch up with her, the 3 women are increasingly inevitably drawn into each other's orbit. So this is of course a book which focuses largely on the theme of sex work, and it's told from 3 different women's perspectives. So the chapters alternate, with one being from Laurie, one from Freya, one from Paula, and then carrying on in that sort of format. And we see the introduction of a new law which basically is there to kind of like eradicate prostitution, and one of the ways that that is done is by taking down all of the websites that women were using to like organise clients and things like that. So we see this being seen as a horrific thing to the women who are relying on this for their income, and then from women like Paula's perspectives, who are like in their minds like champions of women's rights, seeing this as a major success and a win for like feminism everywhere. And we basically see how this is such a like provocative and very divisive topic that is completely different depending on your investment in the subject and of course your involvement in the type of work that is being done. So it's really interesting. I'm currently on page 124, and at this point in the novel the law has been brought into place and suddenly chaos is kind of like raining down on the lives of these women who are relying for like on sex work for their income and their livelihood, and basically just like seeing how this impacts their lives going forward. So it's really interesting, a topic that I know absolutely nothing about, and therefore I'm finding it really interesting to learn more through this novel. The author also has lived experience of working in this industry, so it feels like a book that is very much informed by reality and by her own like actual lived experiences, which I think definitely adds a sense of validity to what is being discussed in the novel. And like I said, it's very interesting at what point I'm at so far. So that is the first book on the agenda. The other is Alias Grace by Margaret Atwood, which I'm reading for mine and Sarah's A to Z of Classics read along, which we are starting this month in March, and A is At It with Atwood, and we're reading this book. So I'm also a couple of pages into this one. Specifically I'm on page 56, and this is a very different type of book. This one is told from the perspective of a woman called Grace who was accused of murder, and she is in prison throughout the novel, but then we're kind of finding out both in the present time what's going on in her life, and then retrospectively like what went on. Did she actually commit the crime? How was she accused? How did the trial go down? And there are lots and lots of different things happening. It's also quite multi-textual because we're getting like bits of like traditional prose. There are also bits of poetry thrown in there, and then also like excerpts and quotes from other authors, and also bits that are meant to kind of look like letters and news articles in relation to the case that is being told about. So it's like very rich with texts in different styles, which I think really adds to like the drama and uncertainty about what's going on, and so far I'm really enjoying it. There was actually a chapter that was told entirely in the form of poetry, and it was in a like style that was just like 4-line stanzas throughout the book, and it was like a good few pages long where we had like a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6-page poem, very like simplistic rhyming style, very repetitive stanzas, and it felt so familiar to me. So when I saw that, I was really nervous because I'm not really someone who likes poetry, but as soon as I started reading that poem in particular, it really threw me back to a poem that I studied when I was doing my A-levels, which was called Victor by W.H. Auden, and that is about a man who is like very like straight and narrow, very morally guided, and just like always seen as like a very upholding like moral citizen, and then gradually we see how his own morals and the rules he imposed on himself kind of like drive him towards insanity, and by the end he is having like major delusions, and it is like a really interesting poem, and probably one of the only poems I can really say that I've like truly enjoyed. And that poem in the chapter of this book, which is on like chapter 3 or something, I really enjoyed, and it felt like quite similar to that. So on the whole, really enjoying it, although in the grand scheme of the book I'm so close to the beginning, so I don't have loads to say, but what I will say is that it's interesting so far, and also feels different to Margaret Atwood's other books, which are far more in the genre of like dystopia and speculative fiction with like a much more scientific like nature crisis theme. There doesn't seem to be that in this one. This one is in the 1800s, so like quite a different time setting to her more futuristic novels, but I'm really excited to see like how it unfolds and like what the book is all about. So that's what we have going on in terms of reading, and that is one thing I'm certain I'll be doing this weekend. The other certainty is literally what I've got on the agenda today, which is that Sarah is coming round. I think we may do some reading together, and then we are going to a hot yoga class, which I'm so excited about. Sarah and I actually originally met when she came to some of the yoga classes that I was teaching, but we haven't been doing much yoga at all recently. But last week we decided to finally get ourselves to a class, and I for one am sold because it was so good. Hot yoga, you sweat like nothing else, but it is just unbeatable, the feeling after you finish the class. So we're going to hot yoga very shortly, and then it'll just be a cozy afternoon of reading, and I'm sure I'll catch up with you in a little bit. So glad that I decided to start going back to yoga again. I feel like my journey with yoga is that I started it, got completely obsessed, and I did it literally every single day for quite a long time, and of course did my yoga teacher training, which coincided with the start of like lockdowns, and I think I just got Zoom yoga fatigue, because while it was great that Zoom was there and allowed people to still keep up with their like yoga practice and be taught throughout lockdowns, it also, no matter how hard you try, is just not the same as being in a studio environment, and I just didn't like it. And not only was I going to Zoom yoga classes, but I was also teaching them, and I think I just started to associate Zoom yoga and then like regular yoga together to the point where I just kind of like disengaged from the whole practice, and so I've taken quite a while away from the mat. and being back in a proper studio again has just like completely reignited why I love yoga so much, and I just am now back to that point of being obsessed and wanting to do it all the time. I also have let finances kind of like put me off for a while because it is an expensive hobby. Like the membership that I've got now for the hot yoga place is £70 a month for 10 classes per month. So it's definitely not a cheap hobby, but equally, I looked at my finances last month and I spent a lot of money, certainly more money than I'm going to be spending on the yoga membership on going out for coffee and food. And while that's obviously fun and I'm not going to cut that out entirely, I personally think that I can definitely make adjustments to my spending habits so that I can actually put the money into investing in like health and wellness through yoga practice rather than just throwing all the money away on coffee and things that are nice in the moment but don't really have any long-term benefit on my life. So all that to say, today's yoga class was wonderful and I'm so glad to be back on the mat, and it's also very nice to know that I haven't lost all of my flexibility, because that was a fear of mine, but I think I've been keeping up with stretching enough to the point where I can kind of jump back in without having lost too much of my flexibility and strength. So on the whole, loving yoga and happy to be sharing that love, because I think everyone should try yoga at least a couple of times in their life. I think it's kind of like one of those things where you need to try a couple of teachers sometimes and find one that clicks, but once you do, it's like an addiction. So I'm glad to be back. But since getting back from my yoga class, I have just been doing some reading, splitting my time between both of these books, which is a bit of an unusual experience for me because I generally speaking like to read just one book at one time, but with Alias Grace and the fact that this is for a read-along, I'm really going to be trying to make an effort for my classics read-along to not leave the book to the last minute, which is something that I'm so bad at doing when it comes to read-alongs and book clubs and things like that. And this book is in total over 500 pages, so a little bit chunkier, and I'm thinking that this will just be one that I kind of spread throughout the whole month so that it's not like one big rush at the end of March to get it finished before the live show. So I'm now on page 110 of this book, and it's definitely interesting, but Margaret Atwood really likes to make you work to understand her books, and so there is a lot going on. We of course have like the main focus of the book is on our main character Grace and her like criminality essentially. Then there are lots of other things going on as well, with a doctor who's taken a particular interest in Grace and her life and whether she is or isn't guilty. The doctor has a bit of a strange relationship to religion, and there is just like a lot going on. So at this point in the book, which is essentially about 1/5 of the way through, so still quite close to the beginning, it's still very much like scene setting, introducing characters, and I really don't know what direction it's going to go in at this point. I have literally no predictions, but I'm enjoying the process of like unpicking what's going on and understanding the characters better, and I'm definitely excited to see what direction it goes in, because like I said, at this point, no clue whatsoever. I then did a little bit more reading of The Service, and I'm now about halfway through this one on page 165. Everything that I said this morning still stands. It is essentially just like dissecting the impact of this change of law on these women, and also just diving into their lives and experiences in general. So it's not really a major plot type book in the sense that I don't think we're leading up to any one big event. It's more so just like a dissection of their lives and looking into how their lives and experiences and opinions kind of intersect, and of course also oppose one another. So I'm really finding this one a very interesting and quite educational reading experience, and I'm hoping that while I will be like sort of bringing this book through the rest of March, or at least over the next couple of weeks, I'm hoping to be able to finish this one over the course of my 5-day long weekend. So there we have it. I've also just been watching some MasterChef while I ate my lunch earlier, and it is making me so hungry. MasterChef is obviously like such a fun show to watch, and they're very creative, but for my dinner tonight I'm going to be having one of the most basic but also most delicious dinners on my like weekly meal roster, and that is simply vegan sausage sandwiches with vegetables. It's so simple but so delicious, and I am so excited to dive in. So I'm basically just waiting for Jade to get back from work so that I can make dinner, and then we can watch some TV together and chill out for a Friday evening well spent in front of the TV. Saturday, guys. I'm just about to head out for my monthly nails appointment, which I'm so excited about. At the moment, I'm just sticking to super classic nude nails, and I'm absolutely loving them because I'm trying to save some money by not going as often, and this way I can go literally just once a month, because this colour doesn't look as bad when it's grown out, whereas when you get like fancy patterns, while they look so fun when you have them done for the first couple of weeks, after that you really need to get them done again. So these nudes are really doing it for me right now. But momentously, for the first time in probably about 3 months, I've managed to go the entire month without breaking a single nail, which is just, I genuinely thought at a certain point that these 2 nails were destined to get broken every single time, because I just kept cracking them, typically in like the week before my appointment. So this week has been tense, watching, waiting, being really careful with what I'm doing with my hands, and I've done it, I have made it, and I'm about to get fresh nails, which I'm super excited about. I'll probably also nip into town while I'm out getting my nails done and grab a like Saturday morning coffee, and then other than that, the only other plan on the agenda today, or rather the only other plans are, I'm going to be recording a podcast episode with Em, which I'm very excited about, and also going to yet another hot yoga class. I probably only am going to go to like 2 classes a week, but just because of how the timetable works, it'll mean that that always falls like 2 consecutive days, because obviously the weekend is when the weekend is. So those are my Saturday plans, and aside from all of those, it will just be time to knuckle down and get focused on reading, which I'm very, very excited about. Hope you are having a fabulous day. Let's go get some nails done.
Life is a winding road, no telling where it goes. Driving through days and nights, won't stop for traffic lights. And I really wanna know if I will ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high, even if the sky is falling down. Jumping from cliffs so high, trusting our wings to fly. Sometimes we're crashing down, but we get up and start from the ground. And I
Stop. Morning, guys. So it is now Sunday, and Jay and I are just heading off for a little Sunday morning hike. So we're on the drive now.
Stupid. Stupid.
And Jay is trying to make sure I absolutely cannot hold this camera steady, so thank you so much for that. But I just wanted to mention that I also brought a book along with me for the drive, so I've been doing some more reading of the service, and I'll catch up with you on my thoughts on that later. But for now, we're just heading off to Raspberry Topping to do a Sunday morning hike.
I really wanna know if I will ever figure out where the road goes. Even if I'm falling down, I will keep on searching for my highs. You can say I lost my mind, I will keep on holding my head high, even if the sky is falling down. Even if the sky is falling down, yeah. The sky is falling down.
Just got back back from our little Sunday morning hike. I'm not sure if you could actually hear me in the car this morning because Jay was driving all over the place and trying to make it as hard as possible for me to vlog. So just for a little bit of extra context, Jay and I both had a day off today, so we decided to go off to somewhere called Roseberry Topping, which is a really cool hill slash, yeah, it's definitely not a mountain, it's definitely too small to be considered a mountain, but it's like a nice little peak where you have like a really expansive view of the area around it once you get to the top, so it's really, really nice. Sarah and I tried to do it a few weeks ago, back in January I think, but we had the worst sense of direction ever, so we didn't actually manage to make it through the walk that we planned. We ended up doing a different route instead, so Jay took me to do the actual route, and it was so much fun and also such a beautiful day for it. But I've come back, had a shower, which was delightful. And now for the part that I look forward to the most after every single hike, the inaugural cup of tea after getting home. I have what can only be described as the bladder of an infant, so I really have to be careful with what I drink before going on any walks where there's not going to be like public toilets around. So this morning I didn't have any drinks, and that meant I didn't get to have my morning cup of tea, which means that this tea is going to taste all the better for it. So seeing as I was having an exciting cup of tea, I thought I might as well make it a fun one and do Here's the Tea. So today we're going to be trying this Royal Horticultural Society apple and cinnamon flavoured black tea, which my friend Sarah gave me not too long ago now, because she doesn't like anything apple flavoured and I love apple and cinnamon, so it wasn't a tea for her, but it seemed like a great one for me. I also love black teas that are just infused with other flavours, so you can still have milk in them. So I've just made this up with oat milk as per usual, and let's give it a try. It smells really sweet and cinnamony, and I think I'm going to enjoy it. Ah, that's lovely, that really is. It's got like a subtle sweetness coming from the apple, though it's not overly appley or fruity, and then there's just a really nice warmth from the cinnamon. That is just what I needed after that hike. Ah, so delicious. So yeah, she got this, I think actually as part of her tea advent calendar, because she did the Royal Horticultural Society one. And I personally think apple and cinnamon is a delightful flavour combination, so thank you Sarah for giving me that one because I loved it. Now obviously, as you know, I took my book with me, or one of my books that I'm currently reading, on the drive, and that was such a great decision because I don't get motion sickness, so driving is such a great time to get on with some reading if I'm just in the passenger seat, and that has taken me through up to page 274 of this book, which means I now have less than 100 pages left to go until the end. As I mentioned, I think yesterday or the day before, because this isn't a super plot or action focused novel, it's more so just like an insight into these women's lives. I'm not really sure what direction it's going to go in or how the story is going to wrap up, but I am just feeling so much empathy for the character of Laurie. Now she is the one who is working as a prostitute in London, and the reason that she's a prostitute is because she has been through some really difficult times, specifically relating to like domestic violence and things like that, and she has a young daughter that she's trying to support, and this is the way that she has turned to like try and sort of like basically make sure that they can stay alive. And we have this character who you can see so much insight into like the struggle that she's going through, and basically what is coming through all of it is just that she wants to make sure she can give her daughter the best life that she possibly can, and she really struggles with what she's doing, but she's just sort of like putting her daughter first and trying to put her own like opinions to the side, and you just feel so much empathy for what she's going through. Meanwhile, we have this horrific journalist, Paula, who I absolutely despise. I'm sure that's the aim of the novel because she's definitely not a likeable character, but just the way that she treats Laurie and views her as just like this, almost not even a real person, just like a figure in the fantasy that she has essentially built up about what this type of work means, and therefore what sort of person Laurie must be, and just the way that she has built up this view of a world that she has really no idea what's going on within is just so horrific. And then she's just making all of these decisions and doing things that are going to wreak havoc on people's lives, and she just doesn't seem to have any real awareness or appreciation of the fact that her actions actually impact other people's lives. So yeah, I hate Paula, really feel for Laurie, and then Freya is the other character, and I do like her, not quite as much as I like Laurie, but she's definitely an interesting character to read about. So Jay and I are actually heading out for dinner later on today. We're going to go for pizza, I think, with Jay's family, so that will be happening later on, but for now I have a few hours spare, so I'm just going to enjoy this cup of tea, grab some food, and do a little bit more reading. It is now Monday and it is another beautiful day. Dare I say, spring I think is finally here, which makes me so unbelievably happy. I really noticed it yesterday when me and Jay went on our hike, because obviously Sarah and I had gone to the exact same place either at the end of January or the beginning of February, and it was grey, very wintry. It was a lovely walk all the same, but it was definitely a proper winter hike, whereas yesterday there were like flowers popping up, the sky was so blue, and it just felt like spring was here, and I love that. I may live to regret those words, because sometimes snow can like jump up and surprise you in like March or April, but I'm keeping my fingers crossed that spring is officially here, because I, for one, I'm here for it, especially the lighter days, because that is just the biggest thing in terms of the impact on my like energy levels. I just feel so much better and more energetic and productive when there are more hours of daylight, so I'm loving that. However, despite the fact that today is a really beautiful day, I am wiped out because of yesterday's hike. I feel like hiking is just so underrated in terms of how much energy you end up using, because you are obviously like on your feet for several hours, and while like walking isn't the most strenuous thing, when you're obviously doing a lot of inclines and ups and downs and you're out for so many hours, it does really take it out of you. So today has been a very chilled out day, which has been wonderful because it has allowed me to finish up reading The Service. So this is, I think, my first read of March done and dusted. I'm slightly behind schedule, I think, because it is obviously I think today is the 7th of March, but I finished my first book, and that is the main thing, and it was a really great one, which I'm so happy about, because if you have watched my February reading wrap up, you'll know that February wasn't the most inspiring reading month for me, so the fact that I've started with one that I have enjoyed is definitely a good omen for March. Now, in terms of my thoughts on this book, I do think it's really interesting. I've rated it 4 stars, and I would really recommend it to anyone, because it was just such an interesting insight into a topic that I personally didn't know much about. If you do know more about this topic, I'm sure you'd still find it interesting, but if you, like me, hadn't really ever invested any time into learning about this world of sex work and what this means for all of the people involved, I would definitely recommend it, because it's really interesting. Obviously this is specifically relating to the world of sex work in the UK, and so obviously it might not be as applicable to other places in the world, but even so, I still think it provides a really great insight not only into what this can be like for various people working in this industry, and how there is a lot of diversity in terms of types of people in the industry and also types of work within the industry. I also think it provides a really great insight into the like barriers that people face in terms of like external prejudices, and I think that is the main purpose of Paula, the journalist character, is to kind of be the face of misrepresentation and also of like judgment under the guise of like protection or feminism, and I think it's just a really interesting one that will probably force you personally to like challenge some of your own views and prejudices, because I think we all have them, but it's not until they're like right there in front of you that you can really sort of like challenge your own prejudices and just like kind of prompt you to maybe, I don't know, shift some of your views or take in a different point of view. So I really enjoyed it, and I think it's definitely worth a read. It was, I don't want to say an unsatisfying ending, but because it wasn't majorly plot and action driven and was more so character focused, the ending felt just a little bit abrupt and almost as though it was just like a quick tying up of ends, but really like you could have gone further. But I suppose that's always the challenge that is faced when you're writing a character driven book, is like where to sort of end it basically. So that is the only thing I would sort of point out as like slightly dissatisfying, but even still I thought it was a really interesting, educational and well worth a read book. So that is the first read of March done. I have also done a little bit more reading of Alias Grace, bringing me right up to page 151, and this book is equally very, very interesting. I definitely prioritised finishing the service, but now that I've done that I can get more into Alias Grace. But it's a really intriguing book because, as I mentioned before, you're getting so many different angles and don't know where it's going to go, don't know what we're going to learn about all of the characters or how different plots are going to intertwine. But right now what we have just had is a section where we go back to Grace, the main character, as a child in Ireland, and how her family emigrated to Canada, facing loads of hardship. They were definitely a family who were living in poverty, and how she gets her first position working as like a housemaid, which is kind of where I think things start to go, well, even further wrong for her. Not that things were going very well to begin with, but we're getting that insight into her family history and just like the background of who she was and what was going on in her life. So I'm very much invested in this book and really, really glad that we started with this one for the classics read along, because it is a classic, or at least a modern classic, that I knew nothing about and was very, very interested to dive into. So I'm going to be doing some more reading of this one, but as it is Monday, my lovely long weekend is pretty much coming to an end. I do have tomorrow off, but not really got any plans, so I think I'll finish up this vlog here. Hope you've enjoyed hearing my thoughts on The Service and Alias Grace so far. Thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next time.